Thank you so much, Reem, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to you all. Let me thank the World Government Summit and the Government of the United Arab Emirates for hosting this truly timely event and express warm thanks to the Minister earlier for her opening remarks. This is a milestone moment. We are in the midst of a global pandemic that is showing us every day how interconnected we are and how much we depend on each other to overcome it. We're on the cusp of the decade of action for the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals, which must be the North Star of our recovery. And we're marking the end of the first term of the Global Councils on the SDGs with so much to learn and to build as we look to the future. Since the SDGs were adopted just 5 years ago by every government on the planet, a lot of energy has gone into work private sector with civil society, academia, youth, and the role of government is so critical, if complex. We can only hope to achieve the SDGs with action and ambition from governments and from all parts of governments. And we also need governments to forge new kinds of partnerships with business and civil society in innovative ways. What role do they need to play? How can they have the most impact? What conditions do they need to succeed? Those are some of the questions we will take up now with our exceptionally distinguished panelists. Because our time is short, let me introduce them briefly. First, Her Excellency Minister Mariam Almheiri is the Minister of State for Food and Water Security for the United Arab Emirates. His Excellency Hugo Cáceres is Minister of the Presidential Administration Unit of the Republic of Paraguay, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome them both. Let me start by asking you both to reflect just on where we are now. As you look back at the last few years, and of course the year we've just been going through, how do you assess our progress? Where are we still facing challenges? Where have you seen tangible movement forward? First, maybe to you, Minister Mariam.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody, and also a big thank you to the World Government Summit teams and all the other teams who have made this possible. It's really been a journey the last few months, but let me just reflect a little bit on how or what progress we've taken on the SDGs. As many of you may know, we have a national committee on SDGs, and this committee really makes sure that SDG targets and goals are implemented or are in the heart of every plan, strategy, policy, regulation that we have in the country. So we really embed the SDGs in everything that we do. This is number one. So we've got the political will there, and this committee also makes sure to monitor our progress as well. So every year we're having to report our targets. Now, if we look at the sector that I'm responsible for, so it's SDG 2, I'm one of the ministers responsible for it. We have to also make sure that anything we do, we report it and we sort of show them that the plan is in line with the SDGs. For example, the National Food Security Strategy, which was launched in 2018.
I think we may be having some technical audio challenges. We're having a few audio challenges, so I'm not Minister Mariam. Were you finished with your opening thoughts? Well, let me turn next to Minister Cáceres for some reflections from you about the state of play and where you think we are today and what challenges we're facing.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good afternoon. Greetings from Paraguay. It's my pleasure to join you in this event. I just want to recall how the government of Paraguay took advantage of SDG Global Council's initiative. It was during the World Government Summit in 2018 in Dubai. The SDG 4 Global Council discussed in its meeting innovative solutions to tackle the challenges facing education globally. During that event, a representative of Paraguay, the Minister of Finance, and Dubai Cares met and discussed a potential program for helping achieve SGD 4. The idea was the development of an platform for remote teacher training and materials for e-learning addressed to students. Today, after 2 years that such a program was launched, the Meta portal is now accessible. It was developed with the partnership of a private partner called Paraguay Educa. The aim of Meta is reaching 300 schools across the country. These schools are part of a bigger project that will then extend teaching hours from 5 to 8 hours daily. 50,000 students are attending those schools from first grade in primary to the last year in secondary. The project also includes teaching materials for 9,000 teachers.
Wonderful. Let me ask each of you perhaps a bit more to go a little deeper in a couple of the goals that you're the most associated with. Minister Mariam, first, let me ask you especially about SDG 2. As you said, you're responsible for that. And to hear your thoughts on what we need to do to make real progress, how we make progress in your own country and the wider region. And I'm especially interested in where you think agricultural technology and innovative technology can play in trying to move us forward faster.
Sure. Sorry, there was a signal issue that I had. I'm not sure how much you heard of what I said before, but in a nutshell, I think it's really important to think of, I call them the 3 Ps. So you have to have the political will, you have to have a plan, and you have to have partnerships. And partnerships, I'm talking about not only partnerships between 2 countries, but you're looking at with international organizations, you're looking at also communicating with the public and with the community. It's really important when we're talking about SDG 2 and we're talking about food security, we're not just talking about how we produce food, but also on the demand side, what's the pull on food systems? Because everything that all the choices you make as a person at the supermarket or what you throw in the bin has a connection to the food security domain and then to SDG 2 as well. So it's really important to think of that aspect. I also believe that ag tech is really important because now a country such as the UAE that is water scarce, that has less than 5% arable land, what can we work on to ensure that we work on a certain degree of self-sufficiency, and that is using technology. And we're really happy to see from all the efforts that my team and I, all the stakeholders in the country have done in the past few years, is that we've really stepped up the game in the ag tech sector. And we can really see the fruits of some of the efforts that we've put in. We now have homegrown salmon, homegrown quinoa, homegrown blueberries, things that you would never imagine that could be possible in a desert. And we really want to work now towards not just being a global hub for food trade, but being a hub for technology and innovation in growing food using technology, and therefore also helping and supporting others that have the same kind of challenges that we do, and also being able to grow food domestically, thereby reducing the carbon emissions, having access to more healthier, nutritious food in that way too.
And the food issues are such a crucible of the intersection of almost everything else across the entire agenda. And I really appreciated also your observation about the wider spectrum of partnership. We, of course, have a food system summit coming up next year as well, which will be a really important milestone for all of us. Minister Cáceres, can I ask you to speak a little bit more in detail about Paraguay's experience and just a bit more about your experience of partnerships? You spoke a bit about it already, but how the government has worked with private partners to advance the SDGs.
In Paraguay, even though homes have limited connectivity, most people have access to at least one cell phone. During the pandemic, the challenges of the government consisted of making education materials available for free and through cell phone services. To address this issue, we work to articulate learning consortiums with diverse stakeholders, including public sector, telecom operators, network operators, publishers, education professionals, and technology providers, coming together to make platforms, resources, and new learning channels such as TV or radio available in response to the crisis. In a few months' time, with the help of these various stakeholders, the Ministry of Education managed to build their own virtual portal, which now is connected with other portals that help strengthen virtual education methods. Meta is one of such portals that helps the aim by providing learners of all ages to develop 21st century skills and engage in lifelong learning. Resources, online courses, and learning experiences are co-created with end users in both Spanish but also Guarani. That's our native language in Paraguay.
Wonderful. Can I ask you both, since we are at this important milestone for the Global Council themselves, to reflect on the experience of how you've used or intersected with the Global Councils and how those platforms can be used really to accelerate the work that you're doing in your own contexts or to give visibility to new solutions and types of partnerships. And maybe, Minister Cáceres, I'll actually start with you on this one.
Yes, in area that is extremely important to develop in Paraguay for achieving in a broader range of SDGs, especially during the decade in action, is social protection. Thus, from the social cabinet, we are working hard for developing an integrated social protection system which not only collects all the information regarding the social services that the government offers, but also can trace the beneficiaries, identifying their vulnerabilities. It also helps identify overlapped services and inefficiencies in the delivery of these services. We are building this social protection system that the aim of protecting each individual in her or his life cycle from pregnancy, early childhood, youth, and elderly life. The pandemic uncovered the limitation of the fragmented social protection programs that have been put in place, and it made clear that the social protection system that we are developing now is the right path to take because only with an integrated and holistic approach that individuals can be effectively protected because it takes into account the multidimensional and interconnected needs of individuals, such as need of for employment, health, education, legal protection, pension system, and the like. And the like takes into account the multidimensional. So I would like to give thanks to the SDG Global Councils for offering opportunities such as a variety of countries for promoting SDG goals across the globe. Paraguay is being benefited greatly from Global Council's initiatives and Dubai Cares. We expect continuing this further collaboration, and it supposes a significant help for addressing the SDG 4 in Paraguay. Thank you all, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you. And I so appreciate, your reflection on the need to see people as their whole selves. And so many of our systems are still too fragmented. So that's part of the whole purpose of the SDGs, to create that framework where you really can look at the multidimensional aspects of the challenges we face and the challenges people experience in their daily lives and find new ways to tackle those. Minister Mariam, let me turn to you to reflect a little bit more on the Global Council's experience and how you have used that as a platform in your own work, but also seen it with colleagues and other partners.
So for me, the Global Councils is really a platform for cooperation. This is where we convene, we talk about issues that we're facing, where we learn from each other, experiences that we've had. I mean, even when we went through the whole nutritional aspect, we spoke to a lot of countries and asked them, what have you done? What tools have you given your communities to make better choices? And I see just going through the last few months, going through this global pandemic, that SDG 2 has in a way taken center stage. Many people didn't really think of food security before, but now understand why it's so important that we look at food security. And SDG 2 is in the core of that. So I think this pandemic has given us a bit of a shock. It's taken us off track. And I think it's really important that we use the global councils to move back on track again, because time is really not on our side. And more than ever, we feel it's really important to make use of these platforms even more, meet more frequently and discuss really underlying issues on how we can accelerate so that we can achieve the Agenda 2030.
Now, I think this point about, the calendar and the clock and time not being on our side is so important. We have 10 years. We can move mountains in 10 years, but we need to be moving them with real intention and ambition quickly. I want to ask you a bit more, about the moment we're in, because of course, as we're still in the middle of the COVID crisis, but we are seeing a path toward recovery, and governments around the world are trying to think about the recovery for their own citizens, and of course for the global economy and societies writ large. And we talk often about putting the SDGs at the heart of COVID recovery, they being our North Star. How do you see that challenge? What are some specific steps that you would advise governments to do as they think about their recovery strategies and the SDGs? And maybe Minister Mariam, I'll start with you on this one.
Okay. I think nowadays it's not about recovery anymore. It's about adapting to the new situation. I think it's very important that we now, it used to be plan, manage, recover, but now it's about plan, manage, and adapt. I think it's really important that we think this way. We have a new normal that we're getting used to now. We won't be going back to the old normal. And so keeping this in mind, I think through the past few months, I think everyone has kind of had time to reflect a little bit and also reprioritize what is now more important. And when we look at the food security domain, and in particular SDG 2, for us, the emphasis really is on looking at how we can boost domestic production using technology, how we can get local produce in the shelves of the retailers. As a lot of you know, the UAE imports 90% of the food it consumes. And so maneuvering through the challenges that we faced during the past few months was not easy. But we had the plans in place. We had the stakeholders ready. We have a strong private sector that really helped us maneuver through these hard times. And thank God we didn't face any day with any shelves empty of any of the essential food items. And so really it gave us food for thought, saying we are a little bit vulnerable because we're so dependent on the global food supply chain. And therefore, now knowing that technology is available, knowing that it's becoming more commercially viable to produce certain foods in the country, we're actually really looking to, as I said before, change the blueprint of the country to be able to grow more locally. Because not only is this going to help global food systems in total, it's also going to help the community. They're going to have access to fresher, healthier foods, more nutritious food. And it's really, I feel when you start growing food, and a lot of people actually through the pandemic have started growing food in their own homes, they start to respect food more and understand what it takes to actually grow food, how much water gets put into. And I usually use this example with the youth and say, when you throw away an apple, you're throwing away 70 liters of water with that apple. So it really, the kids' families are now appreciating it a lot more. They're respecting food a lot more. And we kind of have to use this situation and momentum to really drive some of the awareness and culture changes that we want to bring into our food system.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. So, Minister Cáceres, can I ask you, so SDGs at the heart of adaptation, at the heart of transitioning to a better normal. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, this pandemic and also the huge challenges that we have, it makes even more important implementation of our social protection system. And regarding that, I would say that first, in our case, reducing poverty is one of our top priorities. Still, in this pandemic, is not helping us in this scenario, but also deep social transformations like the health system, especially the primary health system, and also the education transformation that we need, thinking in the SDG 4. Paraguay has one of the youngest population in the world, in Latin America with Bolivia. So for us, the developing employment opportunities and training for our for our youth is extremely important. And also we need to work in the access of the pension system that only covers out of 10 Paraguayans right now. So the challenges that we have are huge, but in the center of our social priorities agenda is the transformation of education. We believe that starting with the early childhood, if we start the beginning of our history, we might change everything. So that's the top of our priorities in our government, but not just our government, but also the civil society in all sectors that we need to work together on this.
I want to thank you both so much. Those were wonderful. It's been a wonderful conversation. I fear we are out of time, but that was a wonderful exchange, I think, on which to conclude. You know, this is a session about the role of governments, and both of you in your leadership, in your day-to-day work, are showing exactly what that can and should be at a moment of such change, opportunity, and need in the world and in our communities. So thank you both enormously for getting us started so wonderfully on this session, for your commitment to the SDGs and for your insights.